So, as Trump fails to get anything done while in office, with the Congress, Supreme Court, and half the population against every decision he makes, he seems to have found solace in trying to deal with the quote-unquote opioid crisis in America that the media continuously promotes as this big issue we have to deal with as a country, or succumb to the pharmaceutical companies' plan to kill us and hook us on their drugs or perish. Never mind the fact that many of Americans are dependent on medications that either keep them alive or help them maneuver through life. Their main reasons for considering it an opioid crisis are because doctors prescribe it too much, in turn giving even more people access to the drug, and a large number of people are dying from prescribed opioids or becoming addicted. Now, I want to address these claims and see if there's any validity in them, because besides the fact that trying to police people's decisions on how to handle things that are addictive by restricting access has never worked in the history of government intervention, I also think their claims are questionable at the very least, and hopefully I can give what I think may be some solutions for those suffering from addiction to a drug that doesn't enrich their life and has become a nuisance. Contrary to popular belief, I don't have an issue with drugs, and understand that like with anything else in life, you have to be responsible and take things you enjoy in moderation, and it helps certain people's state of mind in more ways than not, so whatever. So let's get into the first claim, that doctors are prescribing a drug at alarming rates and apparently forcing people to take opioids till their death or destruction. So doctors' prescribing rates of opioids have actually decreased in the last decade and continue to decrease, while death from the drugs have been stagnant for the past couple decades, give or take a few years. The population is obviously getting older and having more issues, so yes, prescription rates may have risen slightly some years compared to before we had so many medications and generic versions on the market. Not only that, in the state I live, along with many others, it's extremely difficult and expensive to get opioids prescribed, especially for those without insurance. The majority of primary care doctors have to refer you to pain management, which is an entirely new doctor you also have to pay, that manages how much of the drug you get if you take it by giving you a piss test every month, and pretty much forces you to try different alternatives to pain medications, sometimes even before prescribing the medication to the patient. They also start you at a very low dosage or prescribe a non-narcotic inflammatory med, and you have to explain why you need more every month you come back to get your prescription, since they don't give you any refills, and make you come back sometimes every 2 weeks to get more. Government getting involved in the doctor-patient relationship is invasive and expensive for the doctor, which in turn is expensive for the patient. That's why cost also goes up, because of the regulations they have to abide by that are passed on to the patient, who sometimes doesn't even have insurance to cover the cost for the doctor visit or prescriptions already. It hinders the people who really need the medication from getting it without it costing them a fortune annually, makes them spend more time than necessary at the doctor, and makes them feel like an irresponsible person or a criminal simply for taking the drug. The claim is that doctors are still prescribing them at a rate too high for the CDC's liking, but I'm not so sure how you can have a limit on something people need to feel comfortable living throughout their everyday life. Doctors have panicked and just started booting people and cutting prescriptions almost in half in some cases, just to keep their license and abide by what I consider prohibition laws. This is not something to help people kick the drug, and kicking the drug isn't going to help everyone taking the drug. The drug is seen as so negative though that everyone using the drug is being demonized right along with it, as if they're weak, making excuses, or low-life drug addicts. It's a ridiculous notion that we should be able to tell patients along with their doctor that what they receive for their situation is too much for the public's liking. You don't know what that person's medical history is, their tolerance to the drug, and many other things that affect the drug's usage. You're also taking away people's access to regulated drugs away, which is worse whether the person needs the drug for health purposes or is using it recreationally. It creates a black market and exposes people to the unregulated drugs that have different dosages and potency, which brings me to the next point, that too many people are dying from the drug. So apparently the drug is just killing people left and right, when 99% of people that have used opioids don't get addicted, and only 4% of people that take pain medication ever turn to heroin. I mean, the amount of people dying in America from prescribed opioids alone is minuscule compared to the legal means from which people die from their own decisions. People forget to include the detail of how many of these deaths were suicides as well, which should be taken into account when talking about its effect on society, unless you're talking about its effect on the person's mental state beforehand. Let's compare prescribed medication medication to other legal drugs, such as tobacco and alcohol. Let's do that. All right, so tobacco kills almost 500,000 people a year from tobacco-related deaths and illnesses, including the 41,000 that die simply from secondhand smoke, and is the leading cause of preventable death. That means you don't only kill your fucking self, you also kill other people around you by making a decision to smoke tobacco. Alcohol kills over 88,000 people in a year, not including how many people become dangerously addicted to the point that if they stop drinking, they can die from withdrawals. Sugar? Oh my god, don't get me started on sugar, which is in almost everything we eat. It's not a drug technically, but sugary drinks alone kill over 25,000 people annually in America, not including the sugar-related illnesses we develop. All of these are leading causes of preventable death. But do you see government or Trump declaring these things as a national crisis? No, but because there are people that abuse the drug and it's an easy target as alcohol once was, they see it as a quick way to gain support and increase their approval rating. And this only appeals to the older crowd and people that want to restrict other people's access to a product based on their bad experience with it and fear. That's not going to take away people's want to do the drug, but you are creating a population of perceived criminals simply for taking a pill that can get you high. I also want to talk about the fact that a large majority of deaths from opioids and the sharp increase in the last couple of years of death are actually caused by the drug called fentanyl and also straight heroin. Both of these drugs are cheaper and stronger than most pain meds that are prescribed at larger rates. Now, if you look at the amount of deaths from heroin overdoses, it starts to rise more the more strict laws become and the less medication is prescribed. Fentanyl is such a powerful drug, 100 times stronger than heroin, that it's very easy to overdose on the drug, especially when you don't know how much of the drug is in the pill you're taking. The reason I say that is because fentanyl is the main drug being used in street pressed pills, and you can overdose so easily on a drug that one pill may have what's called a hot spot, meaning a spot with a larger amount of fentanyl than normal on the pill, and cause the person to overdose on it. People have to turn to these pills because the restriction on safer drugs are causing artificial scarcity and driving street prices for pain medication up. When you take away people's access to a much safer version of the drug and force them to deal with their pain, habit, or even sometimes those that want to use it recreationally by getting it on the street, you raise their chances of overdosing from a batch of heroin or fentanyl that's stronger than advertised, and you empower the black market. That means even the people selling their prescription to others for recreational use lessens people's chances of death or overdose from opioids exponentially. As we continue to restrict their access and try to imprison those with the drug, it only makes the war on drugs include safer drugs and the problem even worse for the population. When has stricter punishment ever worked to deter stupid or desperate humans from doing something illegal? If the death penalty doesn't affect our likelihood to murder, then I highly doubt punishing people for taking a drug they actually enjoy is going to work. I think it's an obvious way to continue the money machine we call prison and give the police and other departments something to do instead of making them seem worthless and like a waste of tax dollars and other resources. It's easy for people to be okay with the government cracking down on people that don't include them and release propaganda to delegitimize their struggle as a human being, to write them off as broken or scum of the earth that deserves to be where they are legally and financially. When will the time come that politicians and Americans try a different way of lessening the problem of addiction and distribution of dangerous drugs? Blaming people's urge to do drugs and other people's need or desire to provide those people with a safe version of the drug they choose is against the free market, and it hinders people improving the product. It's like people want the drugs to be taken away from companies whose job is to produce a safer and better alternative and giving it back to the unregulated market where people have more incentive to brutalize each other and care less about the purity of their product than quantity, so they can gain a large part of their market. Now, I understand that some pharmaceutical companies have unethical practices and they should have to deal with consequences if they're found to be lying or harming the general public against their will. But once again, if you crack down on regulation and take away public protection, it becomes a very different situation than operating under the law and within the free market. It's just not smart economically or even morally. Now, what I think would be obvious but better solutions to tackle the problem of addiction, which is a sickness people can be cured of, is making access to rehabilitation clinics more available and also not shunning or restricting safer versions of the drug that may not cure them, but will at least enable them to live life how they see fit and hopefully still maintain a happy and productive life. Imagine if instead of paying $40,000+ for each prisoner, we paid people to get sober and maintain a healthy lifestyle. A lot of people don't want to be addicts, but they can't break the cycle of being broke and depressed and solving that issue with more drugs, at least long enough for it to stick without them relapsing. If we give them room and board and help them kick the habit and develop skills while paying them money they can possibly save or use to get their life together for about a year at least, I think we'd have a higher success rate of people breaking the habit and becoming productive people of society. I'd much rather that be a choice than being locked up and forgotten about by society for much longer than a year in most cases, only to be expected to be well adjusted and ready to be a part of civil society. Come on now. Current punishment may make you feel worthless and as if you don't have any help besides pulling yourself out. That's not enough motivation for a lot of people to get sober or break their addiction. If they don't want to get sober or break their addiction, then we can't try to save those people from themselves by passing laws to restrict everyone else's use. And that's what needs to be understood. We can only provide an environment that's a better alternative to the feeling the drugs give you, and we should stress the importance of the things that give you the feelings drugs give you, but naturally through your brain's distribution of chemicals similar to the drug. People may not even feel the need to even try a drug if they understand certain things that they do to make them happy and excited or relaxed and engaged. Now, am I saying that we don't have any issues with drug usage in America, especially with opioids? Not at all, and alternative methods should be tried before going to narcotics because there are many negative side effects and the possibility of addiction which can turn you into a completely different person and ruin your life in some cases. But it's time to admit now, our approach to the problem isn't benefiting those suffering from the problem and only benefits those in control of law, prisons, and the black market. Do I agree that the youth may be taking more drugs than previous generations? Absolutely, but younger generations of today also have many other issues that make them turn to drugs as a relief instead of more healthier alternatives. And it's not like our society has showed we value children of the future or our younger culture anyway. They don't have the same rights as us and we beat them at will and we treat them as if they're property rather than another human being that we're in charge of raising to become a productive and well-adjusted person to society. We think because they have more technology and less overall daily struggles of survival that they have it easier as a human being, but the parenting has gotten worse along with single motherhood. The economy is terrible and more difficult than ever to gain success in without having most of your money go toward today's version of surviving or spending most of your life working monotonous jobs. Drugs are more prevalent and once again safer than previous generations' options. I mean, among many other reasons. Jeff Sessions and Trump's administration seems to be going backward in implementing law and regulation that doesn't work to cause people to rely less on drugs. It may look good on paper at some time with less people getting prescribed meds and may sound nice in a speech, but I guarantee it won't change the number of people that use opioids or die from them. Republicans have been known not to value any other state of mind besides sobriety because it's the only way you can work a 9-to-5 and be a tax-paying version of what they consider a productive and upstating citizen, so they already feel the need to impose that way of thinking on everyone else regardless of that person's level of comfortability with being in that mind frame their entire life. Everyone doesn't want that type of existence. Stop demonizing drugs as if the way people use them is any different for the argument for your right to bear arms. Very dangerous, which doesn't have any benefit to the person besides protection and has less benefits than drugs can possibly have. That's a subject for a whole nother video though. I am pro guns, by the way, just thought I'd say that. But anyway, we need to move forward with the argument of drugs and accept that they are and always will be a part of human experience. Maybe if we focus focus less on punishment and more on ways to curb negative side effects of drug usage, we'd be able to get a lot further in taking away drugs' stronghold on so many people. I doubt there isn't any way to repair the brain or create something that gives the body what it needs to avoid withdrawals and addiction. That's more realistic than our current way of dealing with drugs and expecting positive change. There's always that need for people in the government to create a need for their services though, and the more power we give them in their decisions that affect our lives without any repercussions, the more havoc will be created for artificial demand and other reasons to give up more of your income and freedom to feel secure in your imprisonment to your government. Yo, this is Rev Outlier, and I really appreciate you watching the vid. Hopefully you learned something new and you have a new perspective on things. As you all may or may not know, YouTube is no longer a platform for new and upcoming creators with opinions contrary to popular beliefs to make a living. So if you like this video and want to support, please go to my Patreon link in the description and pick a donation and the prize that comes with it. You can even donate $1, it doesn't matter. I really appreciate any help, and you have a good rest of your day popping them perks.